Technical Writing for Inspectors, Module 13, Cohesive Paragraphs. Instructor, Gary A. Pace, P.E., CWI, Katy, Texas, TexasWeldingEngineering.com. Learning Objectives. What are cohesive paragraphs? Quick tips. Examples of a non-cohesive paragraph. Example of a cohesive paragraph. Sentence order. Common ways to order sentences. An example when chronology is unclear. An example of cause and effect. Linking and transition words. Repetition of key words. And reread and revise. What are cohesive paragraphs? So I'm throwing out this term cohesive paragraphs. Well, cohesion is sticking together, or coherence. It's the glue that's going to hold our paragraphs together, so that it makes it sound like we know what we're talking about. So it isn't just one garbled up mess of random sentences stuck together. So when we're writing technical documents, such as reports, we want to have our ideas stick together and flow smoothly from one sentence to the next and one paragraph to the next. And to do this, we have to write coherently. A coherent paragraph or a cohesive paragraph means that the person reading the document can easily understand where the author is taking that report, what information the author is trying to convey to the reader. The reader doesn't have to do a lot of heavy lifting in trying to figure out what is this author trying to say. Okay, some quick tips for cohesive paragraphs before we dive into the rest of this. Well, we always have to ask ourselves, is this sentence relative to the idea of this paragraph? A lot of times I'll be writing and I'll put stuff in a paragraph, and then I'll come back later and be like, why was I talking about that in that paragraph? Why did I put that sentence in that paragraph? That sentence might work better in its own paragraph or part of another paragraph. So you have to, when you're proofreading your work, a lot of times you need to look at each sentence and say, hey, is this sentence relevant to this paragraph? Is it what I'm trying to talk about? Every paragraph needs to have a main idea, typically stated in the topic sentence. That's the first sentence we're going to get into, right? The topic sentence. This is what this paragraph is talking about. Jimmy went to the store yesterday because he needed super glue. When he got to the store, there was no super glue, and his cousin Marvin had bought all the super glue. Well, it's kind of a cheesy sentence or paragraph, but we're talking about going and getting super glue, and then it's everything. We didn't have anything in there about M&Ms or on the way back from the store he ran into a dog or any of that. It's focused. It's a tight paragraph with just that idea in it. And when we want to maintain cohesion, all the sentences within the paragraph should relate to the main idea. If we're talking about Jimmy going to the store, we don't throw in two sentences about him eating dinner at his aunt's house last weekend or something like that. Cohesion. All the sentences within a paragraph should relate to the main idea. Okay, so here's an example of a non-cohesive paragraph. Hang with me. Weld procedures shall be submitted for all shop and field welds. Welding needs to be done by qualified welders and inspected. These procedures stipulate the welding processes employed in preparation of the component welded, weld metal type, preheat temperature, and welder certification. All weld defects shall be cut out and re-welded at the direction of the weld inspector. It is critical that all welds be made in strict accordance with specifications and under very careful inspection. Okay, so there's a couple of sentences in here that don't really fit. Well, we're talking about welding procedures, and they need to be submitted, blah, blah, blah. Well, we've got this one that I outlined and italicized here. Welding needs to be done by qualified welders and inspected. Well, that one could probably go in its own paragraph, because right here we're just talking about procedures. And then we get down here, I've got another one. All weld defects shall be cut out and rewelded at the direction of the weld inspector. Well, that one really doesn't fit in there. We started out talking about submitting weld procedures, and then we kind of had a couple of sentences in there talking about the weld procedures and the processes employed and what goes into those procedures. But then we've got these two renegade sentences in there that don't really fit. And it might be, relevant information to what we're trying to write, but those sentences don't really fit with this paragraph, and it doesn't really make it cohesive. So we'd probably cut those out or move them somewhere else and then reread our paragraph and see if we could tweak it a little bit. Here's a cohesive paragraph. Timber piles may be untreated or treated and are used only for temporary applications. Untreated piles may be used where the entire pile will be permanently below the water line. Where composite piles are used, the splice must be located below the permanent water table. If doubt exists as to the location of the permanent water table, treated timber piles shall be used. Well, we don't talk about, this is pretty tight. I pulled this out of a bridge design manual for the state of Washington. But it talks about timber piles. We're not talking about steel piles. If you go to this design manual, there's another paragraph that talks about steel piles or concrete or whatever. So this just talks about timber piles and composite piles. And then there's some other information about splices and, the water table. But it all has to do with timber piles. And it's a pretty cohesive paragraph in how it's written. Sentence order, we always need to ask ourselves when we're doing sentences, is this sentence relevant to the paragraph? Every paragraph needs to have a main idea that's, stated in the topic sentence. So we need to have our sentences in order for it to be, a cohesive paragraph. They need to relate to the main idea. I know I've stated this before, but I'm getting it here again. And then here's an example. If you're writing a paragraph on nuclear power plants being efficient, a clean way of generating energy, why would you then inject a sentence into the paragraph wondering why some killer whales eat seals and other killer whales only eat fish and the resulting societal implications of that? Keep it, and I know that's just an exaggerated example, but you can see how things could get off topic and a paragraph could become garbled and leave your reader wondering what in the heck is being put down here and what are they trying to communicate to me? So common ways to order sentences are chronological, cause and effect, and then clarification. The first sentence is a broad general statement, and then the following sentences explain it with details. So these are three ways to order sentences within a paragraph. And then you can do a compare and contrast. An example of chronology, this is one where it's unclear. When making a weld, there are many important steps to make. Finally, we need to clean the weld and remove any slag that might have been left on the weld. During welding, we need to make sure that we are depositing weld metal in the weld joint. The first thing that we need to do is clean the weld, then we can strike an arc and start welding. Well, all of those sentences are relevant in that paragraph, but they're disjointed and out of order. So we could rearrange that and make it a much better paragraph and clean it up and have our chronology work. We shouldn't have our last sentence saying the first thing that we need to do is clean the weld. And then finally should not be the second sentence. Finally, we need to clean the weld and remove any slag. So you can see what I'm talking about with chronology here. So we need to, if we're going to use chronology and put things in order, we need to make sure that, we put them in order so that the paragraph reads well and is cohesive. Here's an example of a cause and effect paragraph, and there's not too many issues with this one. Maybe there is, but this one isn't designed to be, terrible. But the surface of the Earth is divided into large pieces called tectonic plates. These tectonic plates move and shift. The tectonic plates rub and grind against each other. Sometimes the tectonic plates shift suddenly and slip. This is when earthquakes happen. Some regions of the world have many more earthquakes than other parts of the world. The parts of the Earth that have more earthquakes are where the edges of these plates are grinding against each other. All right, so we have some cause and effect in there. Okay, there's the cause. The tectonic plates move and shift. And then there's the effect. Okay, when they move and shift, then we're going to have earthquakes, and then it kind of explains that. I know it's kind of a simple little paragraph, but you can understand how we could have cause and effect. And in the course of your professional writing, maybe you're probably going to run across a situation where you need to use cause and effect to put together a paragraph. Linking and transition words. These are really important. They're transitional. They're linking. They're connecting words. They're used to link together different ideas that are in our text, the things that we're writing. Help the reader follow your arguments by expressing the relationships between different sentences or parts of a sentence. So some linking and transition words would be first, firstly, second, second, third, next, last, finally, in addition, moreover, further, furthermore, another, also, in conclusion. So these are ways that you can, these are words that you can use to transition and link things together. Link different sentences and ideas together. These are powerful words that can be used to help make our paragraphs more cohesive. And then repetition of keywords. I'm a big proponent of repetition of keywords when I write. This means we're repeating key terms related to the main idea of what we're writing, the paragraph. And it makes a subtle path for the readers to follow. I try not to use too many pronouns like me, we, they. I use the proper noun, and I also use I'll repeat sentences or repeat things in a paragraph so that the information is conveyed and reconveyed. But when you're doing this, a lot of times you don't want to just hammer them. You don't want to. The reader needs to be reminded of what we're talking about, but they don't need to just be pounded with it over and over and over and over again. So we need to, if we're going to repeat keywords in paragraphs, which I do a lot when I write, but it's a subtle thing. You don't want to use it too much. Another one, I know I've hit this one multiple times, reread and revise. You're going to have to reread and revise what you've written. You're looking for parts of a paragraph where the meaning is broken down, where what you've written just doesn't make sense, and it needs to be repaired. Maybe when you wrote it a day ago, it made sense, but then you come back later on and you're like, what in the heck was I writing? Oh, this would be a better way to word that. So reread and revise. And a lot of times it doesn't, if you have time to have somebody else read it, that's cool too. But I'm a big proponent, and everybody should be, it isn't just write it once and you're done out the door. Usually you got to reread it and revise it. This is going to mean changing words, adding words, cutting words out. There's a whole process to rereading and revising your work before you get to your final edit, till it's a final copy and you're sending it to your reader. So you need to make sure and go back and reread. Like I said, you're going to add words, change words, or subtract words. Just remember, writing is a process. You're going to need to look at every sentence, word choice, every time you put down a word. because a lot of this, it comes back to either help you or hurt you. Um, when you want to describe something, word choice is super important. So don't be afraid to go back and rewrite and revise what you've already written. It's all part of the process. Everybody that writes does this. Um, Summary, we talked about what are cohesive paragraphs, some quick tips, examples of non-cohesive paragraphs, examples of cohesive paragraphs, sentence order, common ways to order sentences, examples. Chronology is unclear. I talked about that. I talked about cause and effect, linking and transition words, repetition of keywords, and then reread and revise. Questions. Gary A. Pace, PE, CWI, Katy, Texas, TexasWeldingEngineering.com. Got any questions or comments? Contact me and I'll try and see what I can do to help you.